Hello and welcome back to the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast. This is me, your host, Alexia Leach, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, here we are in season 3 of the podcast, and to be honest, I never thought I'd be saying that because when I first started the podcast, my plan was only ever to do one season. I basically started this podcast as a little maternity side project, and I didn't think that I would be now spending my time and my work doing what I do today. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one for me, to be honest, but I thought I might start season 3 by just sort of reintroducing myself, because a lot has changed since I started this podcast. And the last time that I would have introduced myself was probably in episode 1, which was, my goodness, such a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then. So yeah, when I did episode 1, I was basically on maternity leave and breastfeeding, probably because my little one was a few months old, and I was basically thinking, well, I'm going to go back to my business, which I had a business at the time. I was a business coach and a therapist trainer in the head trash clearance method, and my business head trash, which you can still see at headtrash.co.uk. That, I was doing trainings in corporate. I was working with business owners, and that's what I was doing. And I just did this pregnancy thing, and I used the head trash clearance method to clear all my new fears that had popped up for my second pregnancy. And yeah, that's what I was going to go back to that business. And I thought, well, I'll just share what I've learned quickly on this little podcast. And little did I know that the information that I was sharing was so needed, or that people wanted to hear it. And it became very apparent to me quite quickly when I was getting besieged by emails from all over the world, from people saying, hey, this is really helping me, and this is really helping me prepare for my birth. And when I saw the stats going a little bit crazy, I realised that maybe I should take this a little bit more seriously, and I shouldn't go back to my other business, and I should maybe do something with this instead. And so, yeah, so I was a bit confused for what I had to say, because I was sort of torn between, going back to a business that was, paying me very well and doing very well and very well established, and starting this new thing, which is all about pregnancy and birth. So, so those of you that have been following me for a while might have sort of observed me looking a little bit confused and not, taking tentative steps forwards. But anyway, I made the decision. I thought, right, this is what I'm going to do. And so here I am today, and my time is entirely focused on helping to take the fear out of birth. So if you're pregnant and fearful, then, I can help you to clear your fears and have that positive birth, whether you've had a previous trauma that is affecting you, or if you're tocophobic and you're not pregnant yet. It doesn't really matter. If there's anything that's standing between you and your positive pregnancy and birth experience, then I can help you to clear it. And I do that kind of work one-to-one, or you can sign up to any of my online programs or use my fear clearance audios. It's all there on the website, on the Fear-Free Childbirth website, for you to use whatever works within your budget and how you like to do this kind of work. And I also work with birth professionals, and I work with them to overcome their fears and traumas, because it's not just pregnant mamas that have fears, right? It's also the people that work in birth that maybe have observed difficult birth scenarios, and they've got their own birth fears that they kind of still carry within them. So I also work with birth professionals. So if that's you, if you're a doula or a midwife or somebody else that works with, I'm here to support you too. So anyway, so I just thought it might be worth sharing a little bit about, reintroduce myself and say, hey, this is me, for those that, for anybody really, because I realised that a lot has changed in terms of what I'm doing and how I do my work since I started the podcast. Anyway, since season 2, I've been pretty busy behind the scenes doing all sorts of stuff in terms of fulfilling what is my new mission now, which is taking the fear out of birth. So listen out, if you are tocophobic and you are looking for extra support, there's stuff that I've got to share with you over the next few weeks. And if you're a birth professional who's also committed to reducing the fear that exists around birth, and I've got some exciting stuff to share with you too. Now, for those of you that listen to the podcast regularly, or at least have gone back over all the old episodes, you'll know that there are many episodes that come with extra goodies that you can download from the Fear-Free Childbirth site. So I'm talking about things like the due date cheat sheet that enables you to find a more realistic due date based on scientific research, or perhaps you're keen to track down the free hypnobirthing track and script that I give away. Or there's also lots of checklists, packing lists and intervention summaries, all that kind of stuff. Now, up until now, it's been a bit of a faff, to say the least, for you to get hold of all that stuff from the site, because it's all listed with the actual episode that it comes with. So if you wanted to get hold of it all, you'd have to go to each of the individual pages for those episodes to download it, which is a right old faff, right? So I've made this super, super easy. What I've now done is that if you now sign up to one of the free downloads for a past episode, is you'll receive your own login details to a new member area for the Fear-Free Childbirth site. Yes, there is now a free members area for Fear-Free Childbirth podcast listeners. Now, in that free members area, you will be able to access all of the podcast resources in one easy place, which means if you want any of those free downloads that you can get, you just have to sign up for your login details and then you log in and they're all there in one place. Really, really easy for you to find. And also what I've done is rearranged all the podcast episodes so you can find the ones that you need by topic rather than having to get everything by chronological order. So this means that you should be able to access what you want much more easily. But there's also loads of extra stuff in there for you too. So there's going to be new stuff that I'm going to be adding all the time. So I'm going to be adding things like bonus podcast episodes, also additional little mini series that won't be coming out onto the main podcast that will explore more niche topics that, not everybody experiences. So for example, expecting multiples or experiencing certain health things during pregnancy. So things that aren't sort of part of the wider pregnancy experience, but certainly things that women definitely want information on that may be quite hard to track down. So I'm going to be looking at all that kind of stuff, and that is going to be within the member area. And there's also going to be sort of additional stuff to help you on the fear clearance and also on the mindset stuff to help you to boost your birth confidence. So there's going to be loads more stuff within that member area that I'm going to be adding to all the time. So once you have got your login details, it's going to be well worth you coming back in and checking in on any of the new stuff that gets added. Now, if you want to join the Fear-Free Childbirth members area, all you need to do is this. You need to text my name, which is Alexia, to 444999. And that is if you're in the US. So if you're a US listener, you text my name, Alexia, to 44499. Isn't that easy to remember? I've literally been working so hard to make this as easy as possible for you. If you're not in the US, then you can simply join by going to the fearfreechildbirth.com website and you can join the community and you will get all your login details immediately via email in the normal way. So I hope that's going to make your life much easier. It's certainly hopefully going to make mine easier because, well, the back end part of my website was confusing me to say the least. So it's probably confusing you too. So can only apologise for that. But we are where we are. So hopefully that is going to help you. Anyway, back to today's episode. Let me tell you what today's episode is going to be all about. Now, I did do a last minute change to the episode that's coming out this week. And the reason I've done that is because of some really awful news that's been announced this week here in the UK. This week, the announcement has been made that the Nursing and Midwifery Council has announced that the insurance that independent midwives use that enable them to go out and care for women is no longer valid, which basically puts women at risk and means that independent midwives now can no longer work or do anything that they do in terms of supporting women, which is just awful. I mean, if you imagine that suddenly private dentists everywhere were told, no, you're not, your insurance doesn't work anymore, sorry, you've got to stop, there would be an absolute uproar. Well, basically, this is what's happened here in the UK. So in the UK, we have the NHS, which is our National Health Service, and you can access free care on delivery, which means we have access to midwives under the NHS. But they are crippled. The system is falling to bits. There isn't the level of care and support that a lot of women need. And some women have more needs in terms of the emotional need. You know, some women that have had maybe a previous traumatic birth or just want a level of care that is not available under our national service. Women like that use an independent midwife, and an independent midwife is fantastic because she will be there throughout the whole of your pregnancy. She will be there for your birth, and then she will help you postnatally, and she can support you in so many more ways than you can get when you use an NHS midwife because there's more time available. And so basically these wonderful women that are supporting women who need them suddenly cannot work anymore. They've basically been told your insurance isn't valid, you can't use it, but they haven't offered another insurance. Say, hey, we'll use these guys instead. You know, it literally has just bang, and it was announced just before Christmas, where, you know, you can't sort anything out over the Christmas period, can you? So really, we're sort of, in the UK, these are very, very dark times for women's rights, where we, you know, for me, you'll know from listening to the podcast that the birth experience needs to be protected fiercely. It's a very, very important moment. The woman needs to feel safe. She needs to feel secure, that she can really surrender to her body and be surrounded by people that she trusts, so that the birth goes as smoothly as possible. Now, if you're not able to be surrounded by people that you trust, or you have any worries or concerns, then that is jeopardizing that birth experience and the safety and how that is going to unfold, and the impact of that on families, on the baby, on the mother, on her mental health following the birth. You know, a woman that has a difficult birth is going to have more challenges than a woman who has a positive birth. And so suddenly those women that are seeking that extra level of care here in the UK are not going to be able to get it. And that makes me personally very, very angry. And there's a lot of people here. So for those of you that aren't in the UK, and I know a lot of my listeners aren't in the UK, then I would urge you to join us and support us here in trying to bring about change to rectify this, because it just is not right, and we need all the support we can. But to really help to sway you and to show you how amazing midwives are, and particularly independent variety, I have got an amazing interview to share with you today with Nicky Grace, who is an independent midwife. And I know Nicky from a local home birth group that I attended, that when I was thinking about having my home birth, and she started the local home birth group up, the Nottingham home birth group. And so, you know, I really wanted to get her on the podcast anyway. And so I've basically moved her interview right to the front of the queue based on the news that we've had here in the UK, because I really feel that independent midwives need as much support as they can get, and we need to really raise awareness of the work that they do, the level of work that they do, the level of care that they offer, and to try and give them as much support as we can, so we can try and reverse this decision. So I'm not one for getting all campaigny. Well, I am occasionally. Yes, I did do that one born every minute petition. But really, this is something that really is a very, very, it's very important. So I'm going to share some links in the podcast show notes that gives you a little bit more information about the decision that's been made here in the UK, so that those that aren't in the UK can have a little bit more of an understanding of it. And so then if you are a UK listener, then please, you know, if there's anything that you can do to help support, raise awareness, spread things on Facebook, then I would be really, really appreciative, as I'm sure women around the UK and independent midwives would be too. There are some heartbreaking stories at the moment about women that have been spending, you know, preparing for their birth with their independent midwife over the whole of their pregnancy, and suddenly this has been announced and they're facing having to birth without their midwife. And if their midwife is present, then she is going to be struck off and she won't be insured. And so these women are seriously considering free birthing, which means birthing your baby without having midwifery support, because they don't want the NHS midwife. So this is really raising up lots of very delicate issues, and certainly really flagging up safety issues as well. So it is a very complex issue, and certainly needs the support from anybody we can. Anyway, that's enough. I'm now going to hand over to the chat that I had with Nicky Grace. It really is just a wonderful, all-encompassing conversation that dances around many topics around birth. We talk about home birth. We talk about what a midwife is, what the essence of a midwife is. I mean, there's just so much there that it really is a joyful conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. Well, hello, Nicky. Welcome to the Fear Free Childbirth podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, hi, Alexia. Thank you very much for asking me. I'm delighted to be on.
Now, we know each other through the Nottingham Home Birth Group. I think I'm gradually interviewing everybody in the Home Birth Group.
How wonderful. Yeah, we do indeed. Yes.
Yes, I've had quite a few mothers, haven't I, coming on sharing their story.
You have. Yeah. That's fantastic.
So, but you are the person that started the Home Birth Group, aren't you? Is that right?
Well, I'm one of the people. Yes, I was with my friend Andrea Lee, and we actually run it at the Steiner School, the local Steiner School in Nottingham, and her kids were there, so that was why it started off there. But it's been going for about 8 or 9 years now. It was really informal when we first set it up. I mean, it's still informal, but it was basically people just meeting, mingling, having, you know, a cup of tea, and then we gradually moved to this arrangement where we have a sort of circle and sharing time in a circle where people share their birth stories. And it's so powerful, isn't it, when we hear those stories? So that's how it works. It seems to work in that format now, and we always have the early part of the meeting where people are just chatting and getting to know each other. I think that's really important as well. And then there's a slightly, we just have this circle area where people share their birth stories. And everybody seems to really love that and value that.
Oh, it is so powerful. I get, women listening saying how much they love listening to the positive birth stories that I share on the podcast, because it's just so powerful hearing a woman sharing her birth story. I mean, it's one thing to read an account of it, but to actually hear her, and in the birth groups, you actually see them talking about it, when birth is such a magical, momentous event, that nothing quite beats hearing a woman sharing her story. So, yeah, it's so powerful.
Well, exactly. And it works both ways, really, because we have, obviously, probably the main motivation for having home birth group is to do with, the idea that home birth is a real option for people. It might not be the right decision for everyone, but it is probably an option for many more people who currently consider it as an option. So we're really into, presenting home birth as a realistic choice for women. But also we get some women, as you know, we get many people who've had previous trauma, and they're coming along and needing to share those stories in a safe space. And this ties in with the kind of work you're doing. It's part of that, isn't it, where you get a support network, and so I'm very keen to say to people, we hear loads of really positive stories, and but the story you tell, it's really important that they feel they can be honest and they can share from the heart and share what has really happened, and that is actually then they can move on and heal. I love it.
Now let's just learn a little bit more about you, Nicky, before we talk about what we're going to talk about today, because just tell us about, what do you do? Why did you set up the home birth group? What is it that you do?
Well, yes, I'm an independent midwife. I started my midwifery training in 1997, but I suppose it goes back a lot further than that, to when I had my first baby, and that was in 1986. Hey, I don't know if you've been listening to Radio 4. It's 70 years of the National Childbirth Trust anniversary this week.
Yeah, somebody tweeted me, sent me a message yesterday going, listen to Radio 4, you need to listen, and I was at a conference, so I couldn't hear, but I'm going to listen to it and listen again.
Listen again, because I just caught it in the car this morning, and there was this an item from 1986, and it was an historical item. that's when I was giving birth to my first baby, and and the home birth group was at an all-time home birth numbers were at an all-time low then. And what happened is I went to my local libraries are just great, aren't they? And the books that were in there were Michel Audin, Birth Reborn, and the Home Birth Handbook. I think there was a Miriam Stoppard book as well. So when you go somewhere and you read, and those are the books you read, and that's how birth can be. It was so different to what was being presented to me when I went to the antenatal clinic, that gave me the idea. I want a home birth. It was really unusual in those days. I got struck off by my GP. Because they had to support you in those days. It was, it really does sound like the olden days, isn't it? But I found another GP who supported me, and it really was a bit Call the Midwife. The midwives came round with their hats on and their frills on their. You're
really making it sound like it's really a long time ago.
I know, it's only 1986, but it does feel like a lot's changed.
How interesting.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's how I felt. I felt it was funny hearing it as an historical thing this morning. That they had some.
Were you a midwife back then?
Oh no. I was a youngster. Having a baby at 21 and single parent, all that sort of thing. But that was how I got. I suppose that was my first encounter with the world of birth and doing things a bit differently as well, because it was very, very unusual in 1986 to have your first baby at home, and I don't know why, I just never fitted into those institutions. And then, a lot of years went by, I didn't actually train until I was 29. So I came to it as a mature student, and I'd already got 2 children.
So were you an independent midwife from the beginning, or did you start within the NHS?
Well, no, I trained in the normal way, and I trained here in Nottingham at the University of Nottingham, and then I actually worked for the NHS for 6 years. So I did, and I think that experience was very valuable to me. I worked first in the hospital, then I did work in the community, loved many aspects of it, but again, there was just always that aspect of me that doesn't quite fit into an institution. And so a couple of friends went independent in 2006, and so we set up our own practice, basically, which is, for people who don't know, that is basically, it's being private. It's a private midwifery service. So in the UK, the NHS offers a free at the point of delivery service, health service, obviously, but my clients do have to pay, so it's kind of an interesting thing that there is a free service available, and yet people still feel the need to have something that they can't get within the NHS.
So what do you think are the main factors that make them want to kind of pay for somebody independent of the NHS here in the UK?
There are a range of factors. I would say probably half have had previous trauma. So they've had a birth in hospital, or possibly they've had an attempted home birth that's transferred to hospital, and found that for whatever reason, they didn't feel that their needs and wishes were met within that service. And it's often not to do with the actual people who attended them, but it's more to do with fitting into a system. And you hear words like factory-like system, or people feeling, even more kind of distressing kind of ideas, really, that people are feeling they're not being looked at as an individual. And of course, so people with previous trauma, some people just want more individualized midwifery care. I mean, what I offer is one-to-one care throughout the antenatal period. Then I attend them for the birth, and then postnatally. So we get a chance to develop a relationship. And I think a lot of women find that so valuable when they're giving birth, that they do know the person who is going to be with them. And they've developed a relationship of trust. They know I'm not going to start trying to make them do anything, or, rightly or wrongly, that we do have that impression that there are guidelines that must be followed, and these are the things that need to be done during a birth. And actually, they're guidelines. Things should be offered to women, and I do feel I have a little bit more freedom in that respect as I work for myself. I run my own business. So I think what might be really interesting for some of my listeners to hear is what's the essence of midwifery, the root of midwifery? Because I think some people's experience of midwifery might have kind of veered a little bit off that, what the essences, and we, you organised the ARM conference, which is the Association of Radical Midwives, recently, and that was really interesting for me to attend, because it really hinted at this idea of radical, and I thought, radical, and what does radical mean? I thought that was a bit of a strange word, but actually it was really hinting to the root of midwifery. So I think it'd be really good for you to just elaborate on that a little bit, so that women listening have a sense of what they can expect from their midwives, and certainly those that sign up to be midwives, what the reason they're doing it, and how they might be moulded by the system and stop doing that in time. But to touch on what that essence of midwifery is, what would that be for you? Oh gosh, that is a big question, isn't it? That's a really fascinating train of thought, really. The idea of the radical midwife, as you say, it's back to the roots, and it's to do with what is a midwife? It's to do with relationship. It's to do with, for me, it's about being with a woman. So that, that concept of being with woman, not doing things to a woman, but working in partnership with her to empower her, or that she becomes empowered. Not that I'm necessarily doing it, but I'm walking alongside her. A presence, so that concept of presence as well, where people feel there's an engaged, presence with them, not necessarily again doing anything, but there's also a concept of holding the space, which I'm not I used to use that phrase a lot. I think now I feel it's more walking alongside, but there can certainly be an aspect of holding space for women as well. So basically the essence of midwifery is being with woman, and that can mean different things for different women. It's to do with presence. I do believe there's skills involved in midwifery as well, which are more things, clinical skills, because that maybe is the difference between having an unattended birth and having a birth attended by a midwife. The midwife is, a big part of the role is to do with encouragement and allowing her birth to unfold in the way that nature intends. But if there are complications, I do have those skills. I like to think that I have skills, and I have trained that I can manage complications, the rare complications that arise. We know what to do, and we know if we need to refer to somebody else. And there are occasions when interventions are necessary in birth, and I think they're quite rare. But when they do happen, then thank goodness we have got the people that can deal with them. So I don't know if I've told you the essence of midwifery. Being with woman, that's the essence. Being with woman. There's just so many other aspects.
I know, and it just, it just feels like such a big thing to kind of be with woman, when you think you got to be there to help her to unfold and empower in a way that's going to be empowering for her and the birth that she wants, and the birth that feels right for her and her baby and her family, and depending on what her faith might be or her desires or how she's prepared. I mean, there's just so much there, and I haven't scratched the surface with just what I've said already, but there's so much more to it. It just feels like the role of a midwife can expand so much, and actually does require so many skills that in that moment, that some are so very difficult to pinpoint. Really, the soft skills are those kind of really delicate and think feminine skills. I think the listening, the ability to listen, the ability to make somebody else feel safe and encouraged and handhelded, or if that was a word, that feels like stuff that's very, very hard to learn at college. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Compared to maybe the more clinical stuff, which is, very kind of specific and things. And it feels like such a widely encompassing role that I just want to publicly say I've got a huge honour for midwives. They're just amazing, massively. They just don't get enough high fives in public. Do you know what I mean? Don't want to put it down in it. Do you know what I mean?
You get a few, I think. I think we do get quite... No, I mean, it's a very varied role. I think there's elements of both that are innate, and also I think you can learn and improve your skills in all the areas as well. I think some people do have a natural gift for even the physical side of it, the touch. You can... you need a sensitive touch, really, which to actually be a good clinician, it's not just about being, obviously the woman wants you to be sensitive and gentle, but the more sensitive you are, the more, I'm doing with my hands now, which Alexia can see, but the listeners can't see, because that kind of, if you're helping a woman to work out, say, the position of the baby. I mean, I think actually, so 20 years ago when I started, that was a palpation, they call it. That's a skill, the woman, that's part of what we do in antenatal care. But the more I do that, the more I kind of think, wow, that is it's an intimate thing. You're touching the woman's belly, and you're working together to work out how this baby is. And it can be, my clients love that bit. And it's just, it in some ways that isn't in a guide. There might be an aspect where you're thinking about preparing for the birth. How is the baby lying? And it can, help build the picture. But there's something more intangible about that, where you're working with a woman, and it's about connecting with the baby. And I love that. And we get the little children involved, and the siblings will have a have sort of talking to the baby and working out where its feet are, and maybe having a listen through I've got this amazing thing called a fetoscope, where it's really low tech. It's just like a stethoscope, and they can hear the baby's heart through it.
Oh, I remember when I heard my baby's heart when I went for my midwifery appointments. I loved that, just their little hearts really like going really. They go quite fast, don't they?
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah, they're about twice the speed of an adult. Yeah, it's just very, very precious. Those so it's not just the birth, is it? For midwives, and for the woman as well. I think in one of your other podcasts, you were talking about the process. Going through pregnancy is a transformative process for everyone, whether you're conscious of it or not, isn't it? Really, but it's just so the work you're doing is kind of trying to make that process more conscious and help women to see that transformative power that's going on, whether and kind of help that.
So do you find that the women that come to you, do they seek that kind of support from you in terms of helping them with that transformation?
My clients do, actually. I suppose that's, again, if you were kind of person, I mean, many women are, I don't think anybody really wants to go along and just have a 10-minute appointment, do they? But many women are not really maybe wanting to do this sort of exploration, but a lot of my clients are, and then I think that's great, we can walk on that path together, where they're perhaps releasing things from the past, whether that's a previous birth or maybe it's just in life, things that happened, and then so we're walking along on that journey. I often think of it as a journey. It's a journey, isn't it? It's a life, part of life, the life journey.
It's a huge journey, really, especially for first-time mums that are kind of going to become a mother, and it kind of brings up a lot of motherhood and what mother means. Mother's such a loaded word. You can't say the word mother to a room full of people without getting a whole range of responses in people, whether their mother was the most adoring woman that they worshipped or whether she wasn't, and what that means, what the word mother means to people, and what their journey to motherhood might mean to them, and whether they think they're capable of it or not capable of it, or all. And there's so much in there. I know that when I work with women in terms of helping them to release the fears in preparation for birth, a lot of fears for some are certainly around fear of being a mother, and will I be any good, and or not having a mother of my own to help support me, and who am I going to turn to help to help me on that journey. And the birth is the least of their worries. It's what's come straight after the birth that they're worried about, And so there's a whole range of stuff going on for women in that period. And I think those that are open and are listening to that and can be much better prepared overall than those that maybe tuck it away and try and ignore it, And there are some that do that.
I actually agree. As I say, I think the transformation happens anyway, and the more, and if you're sort of suppressing those aspects of it, then perhaps you're going to find it harder in the long run. It might seem easier because you're not having to do that kind of emotional work as you're going along, but actually the things pop up, don't they? Yeah. You can't really suppress and repress everything. It does appear in and I tend to think, actually, I don't know, but it can manifest in the birth. If you've dealt with some of these things in the pregnancy, the birth can be easier. Well, I mean, I know that's your view as well, but we are embodied beings, aren't we? So what happens in the body, you can't separate that from the mind and the emotion. So yeah, my practice as a midwife is very holistic, I think. I mean, I'm not really, I'm not a therapist. I don't claim to be a therapist, but I think it's good to just acknowledge the emotional aspects and the psychological aspects of this journey. But yeah, midwife, you're making me think, actually. A midwife is there's a lot of aspects to the role, and that's why it's so fascinating, though, because every woman is so different.
Yeah,
and they all. The more you do it, the more you realise, oh my goodness, there's just not one woman that is, and they're all so different, and every client I learn something new from, and that is as true today as it was 20 years ago, and probably even truer, because I love babies, and I probably even, it's like a baby coming into the world, and they're a perfect, innocent, precious new life. Let's try and make that entry to the world as gentle and positive as we can, for them, because it's one of the biggest day. It must be the biggest day of our lives in a way, but we just because we can't remember it with words, it is an important part of our life, isn't it? How we're born.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of research backing that up now about how our arrival into this world is so important, and how if it isn't the most positive it can be, how it can have repercussions on us in life. And it's such a fascinating area of research. But I wanted to ask you this about birth, because ever since I've kind of overcome my own crap on birth and all my own fears, and I realised I had my own traumatic birth that was impacting on my own tocophobia that I had. But now I've kind of got through that, and whenever I watch a birth, let's say it's a home birth on YouTube or a water birth, I just get all the photographs that you see in our Facebook feeds, I just cannot help but have a tear come to my eye and be moved, because it's such a beautiful moment. And I just wonder whether, does that still happen to you as a midwife? Do you still get moved in those moments?
More and more.
Really?
Well, I know it's because when you're learning, and I'm talking about the clinical skills, you're very focused on that, actually. I mean, I've always tried to be a gentle presence, hopefully, and not kind of a fearful presence, hopefully, because I think that's very catching as well. But I suppose we're very focused, so we're watching the baby, and there's always, I don't know, that focus of what could happen, and we have a sort of range of tools at our disposal in terms of skills. But the more experienced you get, I think, that focus is still there. But the emotional aspects are just, they're stronger than ever, shall we say. I don't tend to cry at the actual birth. But I remember quite recently, I see a lot of water births, which I love water births, obviously, but I saw a baby being born. It's quite unusual nowadays to see one that isn't in the water, and we were trying to fill the pool. It was all, it was poor dad was desperately trying to fill this pool. It was this huge bathroom, and they were in the bathroom, and this baby wasn't waiting for the pool.
Sounds like my birth, that one.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
You get your pool.
No, I was kept saying, have you got the water ready? He's like filling it up. Is the temperature ready? No, just get the temperature ready. And out she shot, like not waiting for the pool.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So he wasn't even there. He was busy in the kitchen, and I'm in the lounge, waiting for the pool.
We were at least. But I did feel for because it's kind of pressure for them then.
Yeah,
getting quite stressed over getting the pool. But this, what woman was kneeling, and the baby, and the preciousness of it, Alexia, the preciousness of that little head just coming out. It just, it really, I could fill up thinking about that. Actually, it was really touching, and then to see the beauty of that moment where she meets the baby for the first time, and they meet each other. You can hear it.
I'm going already. It is. You're meeting your kids. You're going to love these people more than anybody in the whole wide world, and this is the first time you're meeting them. It is an amazing moment to prepare for. It really is.
Really is, and that emotion that we're both feeling.
We're just soppy, aren't we?
We are soppy, but it's the stuff of life.
Yeah,
it's the stuff of life. It doesn't get better than that, does it? That's such a precious moment. So I feel like it's really worth the work, because it's hard work for anybody that's involved with birth. It's like there are always political challenges, and we're facing a lot of challenges, and women do as well. I think as well, I'm really into the idea of women preparing for birth and thinking, because we've got a bit of a thing of not preparing, and that somehow you should just be able to do it. Actually, it's worth putting some preparation in for that, for those moments, because they are precious. And actually, you can have an empowered, precious birth. It doesn't have to be this, it might be that there are medical things that mean that it's appropriate to have some more intervention in a hospital setting, and that can still be that precious and that empowered. It just means that the woman is, if she's a proper partner in all the decision making, then it doesn't actually matter in the sense of, I think the setting does matter as long as it's the woman's choice and that she's made those decisions.
I'm glad you said that, because the one thing that I just interviewed somebody last week who's a mum sharing a positive birth story, and she prepared using all the stuff that I share and my fear clearance method. She used that throughout the whole of her pregnancy, and her birth, as it unfolded, all her worst fears started coming true, like breech birth, C-section, emergency C-section. And she just found herself in this moment where she suddenly realised that actually this is a positive thing. This is going to be good. This can help a baby. And she took the power back and made the decision, decided how it was going to be, decided on how the C-section was going to unfold and what she wanted there. And she reclaimed the power. She didn't feel like she was being done stuff to. She took it back. And she said at the end, it's the most positive, empowering experience of my life. And it was really interesting. She wrote to me saying, I'd love to share my story. And then she said, it's an emergency C-section. I was like, okay, I'm really interested how this emergency C-section was a really positive, empowering experience for you, because you just don't hear that. That's such a rare story. And then she told me all about it, and it's like, wow. And when she was telling me her story, honestly, you'll be able to hear it on the podcast when it comes out. My voice definitely starts shaking, because that moment of her meeting her little one was, again, so precious that it's just wonderful. So for those listeners, listen out for Grace's story when it comes out, because it's just an amazing story.
Oh well, I look forward to that. I really love that because it's, we don't want, you have got this kind of idea, I think it's more in the press than anything, that the natural childbirth people are, anything other than a natural childbirth isn't worth having. I mean, that's absolute rubbish. We're not. I am into natural childbirth. Yes, if that's because why complicate it if it doesn't need to be complicated? Let's just keep it as simple as we can. But where there are genuine issues, then I thank goodness that we have got the medical intervention available for us, and that can also be, as your Grace has said, what a fantastic thing that if there is a genuine complication, that we have the option to have that.
And for me, I think it's about preparing the woman so that she can have that positive, empowering experience, whatever the outcome.
Yes, exactly.
Not only if you end up pulling off the beautiful water birth with candlelight. No, because if you don't get that, then you're going to feel gutted. It's not about that. It's not about what actually happens. It's about how you feel about what happens. And if you can respond to what's happening in a positive way and take it in your stride, then that is going to be the positive experience that you can live with forever. It doesn't matter if it wasn't the water birth or it wasn't the home birth. Or, it's the experience that you feel great about.
I mean, you know what? It is, that will be then the perfect birth.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter exactly what happened, because there will be no birth that goes according to plan perfectly, is there? There's just, I mean,
my water birth
the water birth quite often don't happen, or the people that were meant to be there aren't quite there, or there are people there that weren't supposed to be there. Children wake up when they're not supposed to, or I don't know, but it can still be a really and we're laughing, and you know what? That's left out of this. It is. There's a lot of laughter around birth as well, and some aspects are rather silly or farcical.
I think that's a whole new podcast episode that we need to do about the farcical aspects of birth, because I think that would be. Immediately, I'm like, what? But you've seen so many births, you've probably got loads of stories, so I might have to bag you again for a podcast about funny birth stories. We could definitely fill an interview with that. Things that don't go to plan. Brilliant. So what about the sort of land versus water debate in terms of, because there are people that they're like, oh, I definitely don't want a water birth. So then thinking about land, so I've seen a couple of debates kick off in some groups recently about, the land or water. Have you got kind of a view on that, or anything to share to women that are like, well, will I need to buy a pool? Shall I just go for it and just get in the shower and rest on my bed and my sofa and my Swiss ball? I mean, have you got any kind of anything to add to this to help women think that bit through?
Well, everybody seems to love their pools, and if you're drawn to having a pool, I think it's well worth having one. You didn't manage to get yours.
Not the second time. The first time, though, I did. I spent loads of time in the pool, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But my midwife got me to come out for the actual arrival of little one. Again, because I needed to get into a different position, I think down to heart rate. She said, you just need to get into a different position. So, yeah, got out for the actual birth. But, yeah, spent so long in there, and it's such a relief, and I really appreciated it. But yeah, I just didn't get a chance to go near it for the second one, unfortunately. So it was all filled up. And we went into the dining room afterwards, and it was like a sauna in there. Like all that water had been evaporating into the dining room. It felt all like kind of like, like a tropical country.
Did you go in it afterwards?
No.
The story I told you afterwards, they did get in.
Oh, did they?
They all got in afterwards, which is at least you didn't get in.
No, I had to be taken in because to be suited, the lady who was there. I know.
Dear. Well, that's one of the things then. Yeah, sometimes that can feel a bit. You might have to go in for suturing. And then so how was that for you in terms of did it spoil it, or was it?
No. I mean, and I did. Obviously, suturing isn't a pleasant experience, and definitely, people are worried about the kind of the pain of birth. I'm like, hey, birth is fine. It's the suturing that I didn't like. Not wanting to put fear in anyone, just being upfront and honest, But that's because my births weren't painful, so. They were, I wouldn't have labelled birth as painful, but my goodness, having an injection down there and being, but then I use all my tools to help relax that area to enable her to do it. And she said, normally it takes me 45 minutes to do this, but it only took me 20 minutes. What are you doing? I was like, oh, well, I'm doing some of my mind Jedi tricks to relax my body. She said, that's really helping me do this much quicker. I was like, oh, that's good to know.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I totally didn't enjoy those experiences. But for me, it was all about keeping the birth moment precious, because I wanted that birth, the arrival for my baby. I can deal with all sorts of stuff, so I'm okay going in and after, as long as my baby came into the world in a lovely way and that was protected. Whatever happened to me afterwards is non-consequential, in my opinion anyway, and I just wanted that. I was like, do whatever you need to do with me. My baby's arrived, baby's happy, and we're breastfeeding, it's all okay. So that I felt okay with that.
Well, I think that experience echoes what I hear a lot at home birth group, that I think it's more likely that people but be advised to go in for some reason afterwards. It's still, most people don't have to. And my aim in life is to attend the birth, see people tucked up in bed with tea and toast afterwards. I mean, I just love that picture of everybody, in bed, the whole family just happy, and then I kind of have a feeling of my work here is done, and I go
Mary
home.
Poppins.
Yes, it's great. But again, just to be realistic, if you do need, if it's a bit complicated or the midwife can't do it at home for some reason, or there is a bit of concern over blood loss, or maybe baby needs somebody to have a look at them, then it isn't unlike, it's possible that people need to transfer after the birth. And it's great to hear you say, no, it didn't impact on the overall experience. It's not necessarily what you want to do, but actually it was the wise thing to do in those circumstances, and then just come home again when it's all over, when it's done.
No, for me it was all about the birth. I just wanted that birth to be as positive for baby, and for what happened to me afterwards was really, I'm like, it's okay, I've birthed the baby. It arrived, not it, because it was an it until she arrived, until I knew it was a she. But it arrived fine, and it was all beautiful and natural, and it was how I wanted it. And after that, I'm like, whatever, I can deal with whatever comes next. So I was, fine with that. So anyway, and thinking about, the land versus water debate then, do you think that, do you find some women not wanting water birth? I mean, if you come across that,
couple, but it's pretty much in the minority now. But some women just, it doesn't appeal to them, the idea. So I don't really. I think it's really helpful for many people to help them relax. So if you're in two minds, I would say, just get a pool. Why not? You don't have to use it. You certainly don't have to birth in it, but you might enjoy having some of the labour in it. And many women do enjoy both labouring and birthing in the pool. There is something very rather nice about that, isn't there? Because often mums can lift the baby up themselves, or dads can help. So, or partners,
Yeah.
But either way, whatever works for you is the key. And to think, what do you want? Yeah. How do you envision your birth? What's your vision of your birth? And then why not try and have that? Yeah. And be flexible, and things sometimes don't go according to plan, but why not just have a vision for the birth? And if you see a birth in water, then why not plan for that?
Mm-hmm. Now I'm curious, because I had an on-call birth. My second one was born in the amniotic sac, and I'm just wondered if that's something you see. Do you see that often?
No, not very often.
Oh,
no.
Really?
No, it's quite unusual. Well, completely in the sac.
They had to burst the sac to get her out.
Oh, I bet you didn't get a photo though, did you?
No. You see, this is it. No, I didn't. And so for this birth, we didn't know what she was, and so I was like saying, "What is it? What is it? What is it?" And he's like, "I don't know what I'm looking at." And then they burst the sack, and then I was like, "Now what is it? Now what is it?" And then I don't know. It's weighing all over my hand. It took a while to get to know what the baby was. But so they split the sack to, and at the time the midwives said, "Oh, you've got such a special little girl." And I'm sure all midwives say this to all babies and mums. And it's only later that when I learned that it was an amniotic sac thing, that's what she was referring to. And I wish I'd known, because I wish I'd got a picture, kept the sack. I don't know, all these things that I didn't, none of that. I didn't know anything about all that.
They're very precious, You could have sold it to a sailor. They prevent drowning,
That's what I've heard. I could have paid for childcare with that sack.
Yeah. Charles Dickens was famously born in the coal.
Well, apparently so was Leonardo da Vinci and Jesus. And all Dalai Lamas are born in the sack, apparently. They're picked because, and this is what I've read. I read all about it afterwards. And apparently a baby born on call is a very kind of spiritual moment in spiritual circles. And it's known in advance when there's going to be a baby arriving in the sack. And Dalai Lamas, it's known when the next Dalai Lama's arriving. And they've all arrived in the sack, apparently. They've all been on call births.
Wow.
Which is...
so this child that was... Yeah, who knows?
No, I know. And weirdly, with my daughter, she was really late. So 40 plus 15. I think they got the due dates wrong. That's a whole different episode. And but I had two friends who were quite spiritually inclined that both predicted the arrival of her when she would arrive. And they both predicted that day. And I was like, no chance, because she's going to be way over a due date then. You're talking nonsense. And they were both right. So,
wow.
I know, isn't that interesting?
It'll be interesting you'll have to watch her progress through the world.
She's quite especially, I can tell that she's not, she's quite got little qualities that you think, I'm going to keep my eye on you, miss.
I did have one fairly recently, but the sack kind of, I think that, I'm having to sort of remember it, but I think the dad did peel the sack off, but it was in the pool, so you didn't get this...
The balloon.
It must have been quite, so I couldn't really see it as well as, but you sort of took the sack off before lifting the baby up. So but it was quite dark. I couldn't really see very well. I was thinking, what's he doing? So that was quite nice as well. He did that, and then it was in the water afterwards. We just. I don't know if they kept it. I can't remember. I think they did, actually.
Did they? Okay. Well, listen, I just realised how long we've been chatting, Nicky, and this has been absolutely lovely. And I'm sure we could chat for days. But we'll have to call it a day for today, I think.
It's been about twice as long as I thought it would be.
No, I know.
Could go on, couldn't we?
I know, exactly. So we better kind of wrap up there.
Yeah.
So just a massive thank you, Nicky, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and thoughts on birth and everything. It's just been an absolute pleasure. Now, if anybody wants to find out more about you, where can they find you online?
Well, I have a website, birthgrace.com. Did you hear that? Birthgrace.com, yeah. And Facebook, I'm Nicky Grace on Facebook. If you and I've got a Grace Academy is my Facebook page, actually. So I've got a little training academy for midwives to share the midwifery love with. So it's called Grace Academy of Midwifery and Birth on Facebook. So
Perfect.
Fine.
Okay, well, I'll include all those links in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much for joining me on the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you, Alexia. I love it. Thank you.
Now, wasn't that just a fabulous conversation? Now, as you may have gathered, Nicky and I were talking for quite a while, so I did take some of our conversation out because otherwise it would have gone on for quite some time. So there is a really great part of the conversation where we talked quite in depth about home birth. Now, that little conversation is going to be in the member area that I told you about at the beginning of the show. So if you want to hear Nicky talking all about home birth, then that is accessible to members of the community. Now, if you want to join the fear-free childbirth community, then you can do that really, really easy, especially if you're in the US. You can just text my name to 44499. So my name, Alexia, Alexia, to 44499. You'll get a couple of messages. Basically, you'll have to text me your email address, and then you will receive an email with your login details. If you're not in the US, then you can join the fear-free childbirth community at the Fear-Free Childbirth website. Just on the homepage, look for any areas that allow you to join the community, and you will receive your login details. And once you're in there, you can have access to the free podcast resources and also the whole of the podcast archive organised by topic. So that should make it much easier for you to find the things that you need. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this first episode back after a bit of a long break, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. You've just been listening to me, Alexia Leachman, here on the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, this is just a wee reminder that if you'd like to listen to bonus podcast episodes and have access to loads of birth preparation downloads, my video mini-series on reducing your fears and so much more, then join the Fearless Mummership community today. You can join at fearfreechildbirth.com. Until next time, bye for now.